Hi, this is Calpun Piso. I'm going to explain today crucifixion, how everything evolves. In other words, they call it semiotics. It's like semantics. We communicate using our five senses, with emanations of our brain, making sounds, language, writing, epigraphy, and everything changes over time. The meaning changes, language changes. So I'm going to explain where the idea of crucifixion as a form of torture originated from. Crucifixion was a simple symbolism of the sun god and of victory. I'm going to explain how this happened. And it all happened in the Roman Empire with an event that will change the whole world and create the religions of today, especially the so-called Abrahamic religions.
Who opened Auschwitz when they reached the Rockefeller Museum, since there had already been a discovery but in the late 1960s of a crucified man in Givat HaMiftar, which is on the north side of Jerusalem.
No, it's a little bone.
Recognize the signs.
That's it.
In the other tomb,
Only one.
archaeologists find this remarkable heel bone with a large nail driven through it.
That means nothing.
If a crucified man was buried at Talpiot, similar signs would be hard
Nothing.
to
It's
miss.
the only evidence of supposedly of crucifixion. There's no evidence.
Here. That does mean
A nail on a bone like that doesn't mean crucifixion, idiots.
One answer to this problem. The antiquity trade should be shut down, and its products should be shunned.
There you go, Christians.
Objects must come.
Now, here, Finkelstein, brilliant man, archaeologist. He's the author of the Bible on Earth. And he is trying to figure out what's real and what's not, because there's so many fakes. And the reason is because all these mutations in semiotics, in other words, they mutated from an act of adoration of a god into the sacrifice of Julius Caesar, and a mutation into the display of a god into a symbol of torture, which is crucifixion, that nobody can find. And that is the reason you don't find any Jesus Christ or apostles or anything like that, or crucifixion as torture in the Roman Empire. One single little bone with a nail, and that means that the guy was crucified? That's ridiculous. See how stupid these people are. So this is the problem. And I'm explaining here, continue explaining how the thing transformed one thing to the other. Let's see where crucifixion came from, actually. Ancient times, the sun with the shape of a cross like that and all these stars, they represent the gods. So the gods were also represented in a crucifix. Crucifix, which the words changed completely, but in ancient time was the image of a god, usually an armor, an empty armor, on a cross. And the reason they did this, which also represents victory, is because in the Roman times, when you were victorious, you take your helmet and all that, you put it in a cross, in a wooden frame, to put your armor in it, and you put your shields and all that. So these armors destroy the enemy. Your armor, you're victorious because of it. So it inhabit a spirit inside of the armor. And normally, sometimes the trees were considered sacred. So many times you put and you bless it and all that, and you put the armor on a thing. So that cross with an armor became a symbol of victory, called a tropaion. And that's where the word trophy comes from. You're victorious on something, they give you a trophy with this little cup. Well, that's where it comes from originally, mutated into trophy. The word tropaion mutated into trophy. Well, the same thing. And what happened was that people, the way the criminals were treated, they stomped down on the ground. And then you smash them down, you put them with ropes, you conquer them, you drag them down there. You don't put them on crosses or something high up. No, you grab them, and the important people, the king, you cut their heads off. And you put them on pikes, and you bring them around, and actually, so everybody can see the defeated enemy. So why would you go and try to torture somebody and put her with nails and put him up there? Like, it's so irrational and stupid. People have to be very dumb, don't know anything about history, to believe, that people are tortured. And they're like, during the Spartacus revolt, there were 6,000 people, soldiers, the rebels, that were crucified in the Via Appia. No, mistranslation. They were impaled. You tie them down, you impale them, and you put them in the thing so everybody can see their faces. They're defeated. They're put with ropes in there. They're garbage. They're defeated. So, but everything started changing, because the symbol of victory in your families, you also represents your ancestors. They were all in heaven, with the gods. And you represent them with wax images. They didn't have photography in those days. So all your ancestors, your family was illustrious and very important. You put them in wax images all over your ancestors. This is the image of my grandfather, my great-grandfather, and so on and so. But they were made out of wax because it's light. You don't want to do something with marble and try to take it in a procession. That thing's too heavy. So you put them in wax images. They're called imagines. And that's what you set them in to show and to venerate it during processions. So just the same like we have photographs of our family, and when people enter our home, you have the pictures of our family and all that. The same thing, but in Roman times with wax images called imagos. Julius Caesar was a god. It was considered a divine god and a great man that turned the other cheek, be nice to your enemies and all that. And anyway, he was killed because of that. And he was considered a son of Venus. And Venus is the mother goddess, the life giver, the vagina in the sky. And anyway, he was considered descendant of Venus. So in the when the Senate conspired against him, and it is believed that he knew about the plot, he knew he was going to be killed, because he was like 58 years old, he was sick, he had problems, he had diarrhea, he had epilepsy and all that. And you're supposed to be a guy. You're supposed to, shit on your pants and a toga. That was very bad and humiliating. And he was getting old. So he said, he dismissed his guards. Well, hey, I get killed, and I'll go the right way. And he didn't realize that. That's when he dismissed his guards. But anyway, so he got killed, and it was like 9/11 in the Roman Empire. It would have killed the god and everything. So it was a big revolt, the beginning of the Civil War. So they have killed the god. So during his funeral, they decide to put an image of victory, because they were going to take his body was going to be cremated, so ascend to heaven, just like Hercules and the different gods, into the smoke, taken to heaven by an eagle and resurrected. But to talk to the people about the god, they nobody could see the fire. It's going to be the body's going to be cremated, so they actually erected a wax image, but a huge one. It was put on a cross, which is what you put your armor and tropaeum. So he was erected on a device that you can actually move, so everybody can see the god with all the wax, with all the wood, the stab wounds, the 23 stab wounds that he suffered. So all that. So Mark Antony was his priest. So because all this, there were many gods, and Julius Caesar was one of them, and he had to have his own priest. That was one of his generals, was also a priest. So anyway, he was talking about how bad the other people that killed him. He forgave the sins of everybody. He forgave, everybody. And he was so nice with his clementia societies, and all of a sudden, and they ended up killing him. And that's the thanks to God. So they were displaying that. Now, this image of this guy, this crucifix, this guy on the cross that actually was tortured and his blood was sacred, it would mutate. And that's semantic, or semiotics, as it was called. In other words, the word of mouth, everything started dividing and changing 400 years later, and then Jesus Christ with all the fairy tales that nobody can find. And that's where it comes from. But there was the appearance of a comet. This is important.
The problem was that the real body could not be seen lying on the rostra.
Yeah.
So in order to show to the people on the Forum Romanum, they erected the bucket.
Extend the arms, retard!
Created here, the life-size effigy of the great emperor was hoisted on a rotating platform so all of Rome could see the face of Caesar in death.
Here I am at the Coliseum in Rome in 2008. They had an exhibit of a procession, a Roman procession during a triumph, in which they carry all the spoils of war, and along, of course, the goddess of victory with a tropa eum. And here is the procession. You see the sacred animals, you see the senators, you see the priests wearing their togas, and you see the captives, and the captives are all down. They are taken with ropes, and they carry the spoils of war. With you see the tropaeum here with the cactus. There was no such a thing as crucifixion. It did not exist in Rome. That's a Christian invention. And these people are very ignorant. They don't know any history. And even the sounds were sacred. You see these round trumpets. They all created all these sounds, and they have drums, and the drums were equivalent to the goddess Cybele, which means cube, and created all this thunder, and that were from the gods, and the sounds were from the gods. And you can see here all the procession, the spoils. Here is in a frieze. You can see on the left side the tropaeum, which is a trophy, and with the captives, all in stone. And underneath that, you have sacred plants, which many were hallucinogenic materials used in religious ceremonies, like datura flowers, peyote, opium, and cannabis, and all that. Here is a winged victory carrying a tropaeum, the symbol of victory. As you can see, it has an empty armor. And the wicked lady, the captives are always bound with it. And here it comes from a tree. It's like the equivalent of Julius Caesar. So, the tropaeum was nothing but a crucifix, a symbol of divinity. A place in where you put your armor, and then you take it into the field, and you smash your enemy with it. And the armor emerged from a tree. So that's when you put the god in a tree. That's the reason you use the wood that is sacred, like the trees of the Celts, for instance. And so the tropaeum was nothing but something like this. And in wood, and then you have your armor, your empty armor. There was nothing here. That was the spirit that was inhabit the armor. And then, of course, later on you start putting wings, because the wings represents the messengers of the god that fly away. That's where your angels come from. Because in Greek mythology, a Nike is a winged lady that represents victory, because everything was personified. It's just like Uncle Sam. You know, if 200 years later, all of a sudden, no technology, back to the Dark Ages, and you people see this figure of this bearded guy with a top hat called Uncle Sam, and they think that the guy existed, and the guy did all these good things and was very tough and has a long beard and all that. I think that he actually existed, but no, it doesn't, because Uncle Sam represents United States of America. It's like the planet Venus represents. There's a lady with a tit, you know, and all that. So that's where it comes from. So this is where your crucifix come from. You know, it's not a symbol of torture. It was actually Julius Caesar. The killing of a god, that was Julius Caesar, that he saved with blood. That's where some blood is sacred. That's where you have your Judaism comes from, the Abrahamic religion, with all this blood and all this crap, and the angel of the Lord going around, and during Passover, you have the killing of the innocents and all this garbage, and then you have this Christian idea of the saving with blood and the Jesus Christ on a cross, and then you have in Muslims and Islam, you have the Prophet Ali that sacrificed, and they whip themselves and have all that blood, the blood sacrifice, all comes from one event that happened in the March 15th of the 44 BCE. And that's just the beginning. That was the blood. Now it comes 2 months later or 3 months later with the star and the comet that appeared in God that ascended to heaven, Julius Caesar, next to his mother Venus. And that's where the whole thing comes from. And the evidence is all over. If you are educated, if you have a healthy brain, in other words, if you're an atheist, you will understand all this, and you get yourself educated. There is no Jesus Christ or God or crap like that. They all come from the sacrifice, blood sacrifice of a great man that was Julius Caesar, considered a Christus. And here are the coins. The coins don't lie. You can see all this.
Okay, and again, the Trajan column. And I'm going to actually go in detail. You know, you can see all the different things here in the column. The record of his conquest, and every is folded in, everything has a little record of what everything was done, and all the way up to the top. And you can see the and there is no one single iota of crucifixion here. The impalement, because crucifixion it never happened. It's an invention of the Christians. But the record is incredible. And of course, guess what they did? They put a statue of St. Peter on the top. They should have put a statue of Trajan on the top of the column. It's his column. Stupid St. Peter. It never existed.
The Catholic Church is responsible for destroying history and bringing all these lies and false things and destroying, building churches over every Roman temple. It is disgusting what they have done. This is the sculpture of the man, of Trajan. And these are the plaster cast of the column of Trajan that also was considered a god, a Christus. And they are in the Museo della Civiltà Romana. We can see them very close here. And you can see here there is no evidence. It's a war monument, a victory of the Dacians, which is present-day Romanians, and there is no one symbol of crucifixion. People were impaled. You see a lot of people impaling here, and the way they build things, the way the siege of the cities, the way the army behaved, they were, I mean, everything in there, all the religious ceremonies to the gods. Here you can see the shields with the stars, where they represented Venus, and the sacred gods that were all floating in the sky and the firmament, because the air was the spirit world. And there were many, many gods in Rome. There were 15 principal gods, and this gave the empire harmony, because nobody fought over just one god. Everybody had their own different gods, so that gives people tremendous tolerance. And all of this will end with distortions by Christianity in 325 CE.
This is the way people were punished. Impel them on things. Don't put them in anything that is high. And they were tied to trees. Look. Anything that is high up on a cross type of structure is called tropaeum, represents victory. Victory.
Well, after the son of Venus, the god Julius Caesar, the Christ, the Christus, was killed, and his image, wax image, put in a tropaeum, because he was considered a god and divine, ascended to heaven in his pyre, because his body was cremated, ascended to heaven. Well, this happened in March. In July, his grandnephew Octavius was giving him a funeral games in his honor, and also in the honor of Venus Genetrix, the mother of Julius Caesar, in heaven, with big ceremonies and carrying the statues just like the Catholic Church does today, with incense and the gods and everything. There were some games that began in July 20th, the month named after the god Julius Caesar, the Savior. An event happened that actually will cement the belief in Christianity in itself, the worship of the Christus, which assumed many names of different gods, because it blended with, it merged with all the other gods throughout the empire. And this event was the appearance of a comet in the daytime that lasted for 10 days. And everybody was seeing that. And then Octavius, very smart, he said, oh, this is proof that the Father, our Father in heaven, Julius Caesar, the Christus, has ascended to heaven, is in heaven along his mother Venus. So eventually everybody forgot about the comet, because all the tradition became the star of Caesar. First it was a hairy star, and then it eventually mutated just as simple as star. And this became the symbol of the Catholic Church, becomes the supposedly 400 years later, Constantine made it into the cross that he saw in heaven. In hoc signo vincus, with this sign you will be victorious, he said, in an apparition, which was the monogram of Christ, which is the X with the P. But it all comes from the Situs Julium, the Comet of Caesar. Christianity was born. And with it, intellectual stagnation, pedophilia, psychopathy, sadomasochism, racism, because it was a belief only on one God began that. That's what the Judaism, all the Abrahamic religions come from, all that act of blood. They all have this symbol. You have the Star of Bethlehem, you have the Star of David, you have the star, the Islamic star. And you see the symbols here. That's where it comes from. And this book clearly explains it. And it is a scientific book, connecting all the dots and based on the historical accounts of people that lived in those days. Many, many, many references. Because Julius Caesar, again, it was considered, you know, it was considered the son of Venus and divine. He was a Messiah. He was a Redeemer. He was a Savior. He was a Christ. He was a Messiah. I mean, just name it, call it what you want to call it, but it's the same thing. And the coins that were issued at the time shows here the Divus Julius, means divine Julius, Caesar, the God, the Savior, and there is the star. You see the hairy area there, that is a comet, representing the comet. And the Catholic Church, which actually created Christianity, you can see the popes using all the symbols. And the symbols are used not only on Christianity, on the Catholic Church, but Judaism has them. Islam has them. They all have those symbols, if you know where to look. Here are the coins. Here are the coins. One on the left is an older one, and the one for the 4th century, right here. By having now transformed into the XP, the symbol of a monogram of Christ, supposedly, the Chi-Rho. And here are symbols when Constantine reigned. So the X, the Comet of Caesar, mutated into many, many, many different shapes and forms. Here is with acanthaleaves and an axe in the center. So, and here is the papal arms with the keys of heaven and the hat. Everything original. Here you have a Islam symbol
in the time of Jesus.
That's right.
Everything.
It's also probably
evidence of Jesus.
everything that we know about Jesus.
You see the Star of David on the left? The little star, the Comet of Caesar, right on the left. What's that? Right there.
Found a rock cut tomb.
You don't even notice that.
Presumably it would have been in Nazareth.
Nobody notices it. You think it's a little flower.
Not in Jerusalem. We have good evidence for this from other wealthy families around the country.
And everything that I present is based on facts. If you connect the dots, and all with the evidence that show that it is true. You have coins, you have epigraphy. So there was not a Jesus Christ. No, you cannot find it. There was none of that. There was not, a Moses or a Solomon and all these characters. None of them. And there was not all these mythologies, everything with this blood sacred came from the immolation, the sacrifice, the killing of Julius Caesar, which was regarded as a god all over the Roman Empire. It was vast, it was huge. It was not only Rome, it was the whole provinces of the empire. And the merchants, the so-called Jews and Arabs and Palestinians and all that, they were the same people. They were merchants and traders and speculators. And Julius Caesar actually protected them and helped them. Had been helping them for eons, for a long time. So they regarded him as somebody that protected them, as a savior. And they were very intellectual, very intelligent people. They were doing all this trading, gathering all this information. That's the reason the Jews are the smartest people around. You have Einstein and Freud and name it. Because they're very smart, and the majority are atheists. In other words, they don't believe in all this nonsense. And that's a tradition. But they were the first at the funeral. When Julius Caesar the Christus, this great man that was considered the son of Venus and a god, actually was killed by the Senate. The Senate was an evil body. They were considered the Senate just that they hated, they envied him. Because he was a man of the people. He wants to give money to the poor and do all these beautiful things. And Caesar was Epicurean, like his father-in-law Lucius Calpurnius Piso Saturninus, my namesake. Great people, great people. They helped the poor. They would treat the slaves very well. I mean, they were amazing. very intellectual, and they were amazing, and they were very wealthy, very powerful, but they knew their place. They knew that there were no gods or anything like that. They tried to help everybody, and that was the Epicureans, and they had libraries, and they loved knowledge and learning and things. And then, of course, the Senate of Rome, all these different leaders that want to have the slaves and treat everybody, don't care anything. They were considered, superior to everybody else, a lot of the senators and all that. And that's the reason they hated Julius Caesar, a man of the people. That he was a very brilliant man. And also seen as a god. So, when they plotted against him, Caesar realized about the plot, and they even had they invited him in the house of Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, and he didn't know about it, but the conspirators gathered him, and he had a last supper, Julius Caesar, and they invited him to see if he had discovered the plot, but he didn't show signs of it, so they went ahead with it the following day, and that he dismissed and he met at the theater of Pompey, the complex of the theater of Pompey. Everything has temples in the city of Rome. I mean, the bathhouses, they all have temples. They all have things for God. I mean, the people are extremely religious with different gods, religious all the time, ceremonies. Everything was religion in Rome with different gods. That was what make it so tolerant. And when he went over to the Curia, or the theater of Pompey, to meet with the Senate, that they were meeting at that area there, because the Senate house and the forum was being repaired because it had been burned, had a fire, and that's when they hit his business bodyguards. He ended up killing him. 23 stab wounds, spilling his sacred blood. That's the way the whole thing. And then the appearance of the comet, that created the religion, created all the Abrahamic religions we have today. So you've been worshiping Julius Caesar the Christus, the great man. Don't call him Jesus Christ. Don't call him that. Just call him the God Julius Caesar the Christus, a great man. And he gives us a great example of how to live. That was great. But his wax image was put in a tropaeum. And it's a symbol of victory and divinity. Nothing to do with torture. Pace Dio.